What's up, everybody? It is Hotline League episode 129. It is the special birthday special because we've got the birthday boy himself, Mark Zimmerman, here. He's wearing a little hat that I made for him. And by made, I mean downloaded off Google Images, and then I've been just trying to keep it balanced on his head.
I put it on my forehead so it looks like a unicorn.
Okay, here. There we go. He's got a nice little unicorn birthday. Anyway, whatever. We're also joined by PapaSmithy from 100 Thieves. How's it going, PapaSmithy?
Relatively good.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. We'll do the check in with you in just a second. But for those that don't know, PapaSmithy, which I think Mark is the only one that would know, was proactive in asking us if we had a guest for tonight, so that he could talk and address any concerns from the community, which I thought was really cool and is very.
Mark's already
very
big
rare.
time me one time before, so
I did.
Remember the time where you had probably loaded up, I think. And me to come on.
Yeah.
Fool me once, fool me twice, etc. So
yeah. Well, really quickly, by the way, shout out to Alienware. We'll talk about them later. But go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say it's a crazy turnaround from like 2 years ago with 100 Thieves when there was all their roster things going on. For Worlds, and everyone was like, why is Cody not playing, or why all this? And it was just complete radio silence. So I think myself and a lot of other people are just like, whoa, this is so much more transparent. It's so nice. You put out a video, now you're doing a talk show. It's incredible, the difference.
Yes, no, I appreciate it.
When I came on, one of the things I kind of spoke about was proactive messaging and obviously having the reins to kind of do what I wanted to do. So given that as a caster, I was always pretty big on integrity and like calling a good game and a bad game, it makes sense that where possible, I try and give as much transparency for our org as well.
Do you, we'll get into the details in a second, but just because you said that, I'm really curious because I feel like the orgs every org thinks that they are treated unfairly by the LCS broadcast. This past weekend, for instance, some CLG staff members. Well, I'm bringing it up. You don't have to talk about it. So CLG staff members were talking about how they felt like the broadcast treats them really unfairly, and like after they beat you guys, beat 100T, the broadcast said like, okay, let's talk about how 100T lost, and the staff members were saying, why aren't we talking about how CLG won? So I'm just curious, like, do you find yourself ever looking at the LCS broadcast and being like, man, they are not being fair to us? I don't know if it's kind of ironic at all given your past.
I think yes and no, but maybe in a different way than you might expect. Like, I don't have any time to watch the analyst desk after our games because the moment the game's over, the TV's off and we're reviewing, right? So there's no time to watch the analyst desk. Like, I get the POV of the 5 players and the coaches and stuff. So yeah. I don't see that. I know that definitely in spring, when we were on the upturn at the end of it, when we went 8-3, it felt like all the stories were about will Team Liquid make it or not, or will Cloud9 kind of like go 17-1. And so, like, there's definitely that feeling of like, hey, we're doing good stuff over here, but no one saw it. But like, that's not even though I have like a platform to like whine about things like that, like I don't think whining about it does anything. Like, I don't think there's any that they're all my peers and people I worked with. Like, I get why it happened. I can also be like personally a little bit disappointed, but like shit always gets lost in the shuffle, right? That's the reality.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing where I think every team at some point has that feeling. I know when I was working at Curse and Team Liquid, there were times where it's like, they're not really covering us well or right. And like,
well, the right part is the interesting one, right? Because you have your group think and like, about where you are and what you are. And then there's the public perception. You always forget that like 99% of what you're doing isn't seen by anyone other than you. So it does color all the objective perspectives.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to go from, and I wonder if Jat will feel this at all. I don't know how much he's paying attention to the broadcast, but going from the broadcast where, and I know you were in LCK, but going from a broadcast role where you're like, we got to talk about like the hottest shit, to going to the team side where you're like, why aren't they talking about my shit? Or why are they talking about it the way I don't like it? It's very, very funny. Okay, so in case people didn't notice, because we're going to reference this a lot, I will provide context on what happened last night. So, after the weekend, Meteos last night tweeted like, this is something around the lines of, this is going to sound really troll, but after week 3 of the summer split, I find out that I'm getting benched. And that this was obviously in his mind a throwback to 2 years ago when he was on the team, and I think the exact same time in Summer Split this ended up happening. He made a frustrated tweet, which I think he has since removed shortly thereafter, in which he criticized the coaching staff and you, PapaSmithy, for making the decision, and claimed that this was something that the team was unaware, or the players were unaware of specifically. He since kind of like seemingly walked it back a little bit by saying that he understands why people felt like the tweet was unprofessional or whatever, and so here we are now. You've now put out your video talking about the changes. Do you want to detail what those changes are for those that are or have missed that video?
Sure. It's 2 changes for our LCS roster for week 4. It's contracts coming in for Meteos, and then Academy support Poom coming in for Stunt.
Okay. So what was the reasoning behind the decisions?
I think it's pretty simple. Obviously, spring, we finished really strong. Like, we had very much a improvement mindset all the way through. Started weak, started to ramp up. 3rd place in the regular season obviously felt like an accomplishment, even if people have their umbrage about the league power rankings like in spring. The playoffs got annihilated by Cloud9, so obviously you're definitely feeling that loss. And then the 5-game loss to TSM was at least not going out with a whimper. Like, if it was the straight sets 3-0, 3-0, then it's like your regular season was a fluke or something. Like, the fact that we could at least go to 5 games against TSM was a moral victory, even if it wasn't what we were looking for. And then off season comes around. It's COVID. Like, a lot of roster changes are really difficult. You reach out to all the GMs, and no one can really make moves apart from swaps. And very unlikely going to get some gem swap there. Like, everyone's pretty clear of where they're at with what they're at with. And so we looked at what we had, and we said, look, the improvement here was pretty clear. The team has done enough to justify rolling it back and seeing if the ceiling can continue to extend. We hold ourselves to a really good practice regimen and an improvement mindset. You can't improve much further than 3rd regular season and the sort of run we're on, but let's see what happens in summer, right? Like, I think they definitely deserved that right. Coming into week 3, 1 and 5, like, clearly something's off. I know people kind of masked it in strength of schedule in the first 2 weeks, but I think a lot of people can look at our side of the game and see that there were definitely kind of bigger issues than just that enemy team's pretty good. And everyone can only draw inferences from stage games, right? Even though it's what is it, like at least 10-1 scrim game to stage game thing.
Yeah.
Our practice started really good after the break. It was a really nice start, but it slowly started to degrade as well. And so when you're sitting there and you're not seeing the improvements that you want, and you have 16 players across 3 levels kind of in your org, there has to be changes if you're not looking to stay the course. Like, the way I look at summer, if 8 teams make playoffs, an honorable 5th or 6th place if we have an uptick, and then go out in playoffs, like, what's the difference between 4th and 8th? Almost nothing, right? You don't go to Worlds. So at the end of the day, it was, guys, do we believe, and by guys I mean your staff, do we believe that if we don't change and we continue to work as hard as we are, because it's never been a commitment issue, will we make Worlds? And once the answer became no as a consensus, then changes had to happen.
Mark, feel free to jump in if you have any specific questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to keep.
Yeah, I definitely have some, and I don't want to rob too many from the community, but I think that's a very appropriate mindset with how franchising is now, and the goal is to either make Worlds or plan for 2021. And I think people don't. A lot of teams don't feel like they index enough into one of those two. So I definitely appreciate okay, we're going for Worlds. We think we can do it. What are the changes we need to make? Of those changes, you said Meteos can potentially come back as a 6 member.
Die? I think it might have died.
Oh, yours might have died. I think just turn off the webcam and turn it back on again.
Okay, I'll do that.
Sorry, do you want to continue, Mark?
I don't know if it's gonna give him a second to reset his webcam.
I just silence is the death of podcasts. We just
All 2,000 people are gonna log off now.
I have to keep talking, otherwise people think that their MP3 player has stopped.
We can just beatbox.
Their iPod.
That's another option. Yeah, just to keep the audio going.
Okay.
I think I'm back.
Yes,
hopefully.
you are back. Yes.
Okay, cool. So I was just saying, like I think the mindset's really good. I really appreciate the mindset. And I was going to ask, how were these the changes that you pinpointed? Was it like you're talking about stage performance, scrim performance, attitude? Like what was like the way that you went about deciding which changes need to happen?
Sure, and I think that's always a very difficult process to fully wrap yourself around.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, there's immediate goals of making it to Worlds, and there's longer term goals of if we're an org that's full of NA talent and young players, like you want to see inertia, up to the top, or results. Like you can't really have, if the results start to fall away, then suddenly there is like a lot of play. If you feel like you have a lot of players at the secondary level that could actually ply their trade in LCS and get time from it, then I think that just becomes the theory there, and it's very, like, obviously there's a certain amount of information that is best left unsaid, but the reality of it is that we looked at our roster and we're like, okay, how many changes? And obviously you lose as a 5. Like, there's no question in my mind that there's blood on everyone's hands, right? It's not one person's the problem by any means. All of our players worked really hard. There were no issues there. I think when it comes to Stunt, he was a player that obviously his performance in spring was at times adequate, at times it's on stage he definitely struggled. He came in really, really strong in practice after the break, and we were doing really well as a bot lane 2v2. So it was very much a case of letting that roll while we assessed our options in Academy. And the stage games just weren't quite getting there, unfortunately. So to us, it made sense to try one of our 2 Academy supports. We had a 6-man roster with 2 supports. Contracts has really been looking very, very good in Academy. I had a debrief with him at the end of spring because obviously you speak to every player one-on-one, how'd you do, what's the problems, etc. And he was very self-critical and kind of talking about where he wanted to go and where he wanted to be and what his regrets were. And that's obviously common, right? And everybody in hindsight can talk a big game, but his application to practice, both in the off season and his start to summer in Academy, have been really, really strong. So it was a case of, obviously the meta kind of favors some of his picks as well. We'd kind of hit our ceiling as what a team looks like. Meteos serves as our in-game leader in a big way, and a lot of the in and out of game, is very colored by Meteos. You watch the heist, and obviously it's his memes, and a lot of the team's color is there. And it was going to be a big reset if we were going to go with a new starting jungler for sure. But just given where the meta was, and also this idea of this is a core piece of a team, and I think Meteos is a core reason we went so far in spring. Are we going to be able to really judge some of our other pieces if we keep him in there? Or will it be, at least for the short term, an idea to bring in contracts, bring in someone who's been training down the house, and then judge from there? By no means kind of exercising Meteos. Like, at the end of the day, he's very much able to choose his path from here. He's by no means not in the consideration for LCS. All we've committed to is we like what we've seen from contracts, a player we like a lot. Let's give him 100% scrim time for the foreseeable future and just see what team comes from that.
So, so you guys evidently let Meteos know this, and he reacts strongly on social media, and it goes out onto the subreddit, and people like myself say, "Wow, Hotline League is gonna be interesting tomorrow." But in that moment, I mean, what is your reaction to when you see stuff like that? I mean, clearly, it's not something I'm sure any organization wants to have whenever they're making transitions on the roster from their players.
I mean, for full disclosure, like, we kind of walked Meteos through our process. He basically accepted it and left, and chose to release his statement, which I think is very much in his right. Like from his perspective, it's the same week 2 years later with the same org. And you can get into the nitty gritty and point out how many things are different, right? But like for him to feel hurt and vulnerable in that moment and angry, and he's a guy who all year has been like our captain, like he's the guy who's like, guys, stop fucking around. We need to practice. We need to get on top of this. To be told that he's being removed is obviously going to be a huge affront to him. Like I really respect Will. Like he's someone who I get along with really, really well, at least, before this announcement and hopefully in the future. And so I completely get his perspective. And like, you can put on your GM hat and be like, oh, our planning process is now different and things like that. But I choose to just be a human and recognize where he was and understand what he's going through. And it doesn't change my opinion of him at all.
So just for context, because I had people literally messaging me being like, "Do you think Meteos just boomed his own career with that tweet?" Or, the Reddit thread was saying, goodbye Meteos or whatever. This is not a situation where you guys are looking to distance yourself from him or whatever. I mean, it sounds like you're saying there's still a spot, and you guys I don't know. I don't want to say there's no hard feelings, but maybe is this not something where
look, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
There's no hard feelings with me by any means. Like I've seen the levels he's gone to raise the team up, kicking and screaming at times, mentoring role at times. Like he's been a really, really good influence on the team side, especially to the side of professionalism and staying on task and things like that. And I look at Spring, and then if we had any other jungler with the mixture of personalities we had a pretty quiet group or some rookies and things like that. And Meteos was really doing a lot of heavy lifting to get those guys talking, get those guys animated and kind of understanding the game at his level. And if you ever seen him on the analyst desk, he's really phenomenally smart about the game. Like if for whatever reason Meteos couldn't play in Spring, I think we would have been petrified on stage. Like we just wouldn't have had the right like understandings and experience to prosper. I think over the course of the year, obviously a lot of knowledge is collected and disseminated and shared. And I feel like there are now players who can step up to replace his mind. At least that's obviously the hope, given that we've made the change. But no, there's definitely no hard feelings from me. And it's on Will, right? Like to me, he's one of North America's all-star players, like he's been around a really long time. Obviously the results haven't been the same in the second half as they were in the first half of his career. But he's someone who's had a very long stature in the game, and he chose to come back to my team. And he was the first player who took a chance on 100 Thieves with no roster, just for the chance to work with me and Tony. So whatever he might write in the heat of a moment is definitely not going to change anything about his commitment to 100 Thieves, November of last year, and his commitment to 100 Thieves as a player all through 2020.
I see a lot of people in chat asking about Ryoma or saying, why aren't they bringing this? You guys, this is a call-in show. I don't know if you realize that, but if you have a question or a take or an opinion, feel free to call in.
So
Mark, you want to? Oh, go ahead.
I have a couple already in the chat. Discord chat's very active tonight. I think I don't know if I pulled someone for I think I pulled someone for Ryoma, so we can talk.
I mean, if not, I'm sure we've got
anytime.
Got
Yeah. So if you guys if there's nothing else, Travis, I think
no. I mean, unless you have anything that you would think about. I just want. I think like doing the base level of conversation about this, so then people can react to that, and like, we don't have to wait for call 3 to talk about Meteos' tweet or something. That's sort of the way I was thinking about.
Yeah. I have a bunch that will probably be more 100 Thieves focused for the first half of the show, and then maybe we'll branch out into the broader LCS scene.
Yeah. Because by the way, chat like. Well, obviously, we're going to talk to PapaSmithy a lot about 100 Thieves because that's
all the other topics are on the table, baby.
Let's talk about Immortals, all sorts of stuff. So,
Immortals Academy, pretty good.
Yeah, CLG I think is an interesting conversation as well. There's a lot of different.
I love all
stuff
that
going
fresh
on
new talent like Apollo, Hakuho, and Smithy.
Yeah.
So coming
He's
up
got a
from
good
Academy.
name.
Academy talent. Yeah, actually, I would love to have somebody call because there was this weird reaction. I know we're going to get our next caller, but it was really weird to see this conversation strike out and be like, people need to realize that Academy has really valuable players in it. Look at this Academy team. Well, saying this unironically, whatever, like the majority of these players were the LCS players, and
It's like literally insanity.
Smithy, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Alorum like has been around, right? But
Yeah, he's
but,
got
like,
a couple of shots, but yeah,
I think of Alorum like Stunt, where he never really got the full try. Like he never like Stunt got his first full split in spring. Like he'd never gotten that chance, even though he bounced around teams. So I think Alorum could do with like a full split in LCS to really know.
I think there are a lot of those kind of like have gotten like Solo was for a while because he would be like brought in for
Sure.
Echo Fox when they had visa issues and stuff. I think there's a lot of people in that bucket that probably deserve a real shot. I just think it's funny that at the same time they also moved Potluck back down, so it was just like a total swap of rosters with like, at least as far as I could tell, not really a coherent like vision for why. But either way,
Packrat in the chat says talk about Weldon NA East versus NA West and spam that multiple times. Again, call in show. Call in.
I see someone talking about that in there.
I think it's I'd like to talk about it because I think it's it went up way high on the subreddit and people were like, this is a good idea. I assume you're okay, he's gone. But I assume Mark's hesitancy there is because to us I maybe it's different to PapaSmithy. We'll find out if we talk about it, but like it just seems like a very strange idea to me.
I'm down to talk about whatever, Travis. Let's do this thing.
Thank you. A couple quick shout outs while we wait for Mark to come back. Geronimo, Jordan with the 29 months, 4 Kings, Shell Deezy gifted a sub to PapaSmithy, Sallyzar for 1 year, Don Nardo, and we're back with. Could I just call you Hunted?
Yes, you can.
It's your 100T Hunted, but you've changed it to 001. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, it's my Clash team name.
Okay,
Nice.
Well, what do you want to talk about on the? Sorry, wait. Where are you calling from?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland. What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is that with the recent changes by 100T, they will be a top 3 team by the end of a split in regular
I like
season.
this guy. I
This
like
is
this
so-
guy.
Start
All
positive.
right.
The audience is so predictable. By the way, I feel like the
This
first
is
call
the
we
kind of
have.
pandering I am all about.
We just gotta start easy before we get the Ryoma guy who's like, he sucks.
It's just funny to me because anytime we have anybody on, Twitch chat's like, why won't they pull any of the tough takes? And I know that like the
This is some
Discord chat
Overwatch
is
League
just
stuff
like,
here. Paid audience, paid callers. I'm loving it.
yeah, we could have Weldon on this weekend. People would say CLG's gonna win Worlds this year. Anyway, so you think now we're gonna see these guys be top 3? Why do you think this, Hunted?
So with the recent changes, I think Poom replicates a lot of Stunt shampoo with aggressive supports such as Thresh, Nautilus, Bard, stuff like that. But I think he has a higher skill ceiling than Stunt. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Mhm.
And Contracts also has a stronger meta pool for this meta with stuff like Graves and Lee and Adali and stuff like that. With combined with the roster already, with Ryoma seeming to improve, especially with Azir and Orianna gameplay, some days consistency, Cody Sun's late game team fighting, that they can be a top 3 team by the end of a split, and I think they will.
Who else do you think will be in the top 2 with them? You always have to ask this question, right?
I think it's C9 first, TL second, 100T third, and FlyQuest EG in that.
Okay, so you're basically arguing 100T will surpass FlyQuest and AG with this take.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you want me to reference that, I think FlyQuest, mostly because we saw last split, which I know last split was kind of a meme, but they went 2-1 overall in summer, including the tiebreaker against them.
Mhm.
And even EG, they didn't have a positive win record, but a lot of those games were close until late game. And then there was some mid-late game, and there's some kind of throw to set it off. And that's why I think they're above those 2 teams.
Mark, what are you giggling about?
It's totally unrelated. Don't worry.
Wait, get your head in the game. Mark.
It's okay. You want to know what it is? Tafo, who works at CLG, said CLG is bad and has only beaten bad teams. So
All
I
the
was
takes so far I'm hearing great.
So it was laughing that Tafo put that in the Discord. I'm sorry, I'm reading and trying to do my job.
Happy birthday, Mark. Mark, what do you think of this take? Will 100T surpass FlyQuest?
I think that's really optimistic. Will they get better? Probably. But I think there's a couple elements to it. You know, you talked about play styles and some of the champ pools that could be improved or, you know, even just replicated. I think the thing is finding the play style that's going to work for them, because as Papa was kind of talking about, Meteos sounds like a big part of the team in game and out of game. And shot calling is definitely one of those complicated things where it doesn't ever fall on one person's shoulder. But, having a leader does help a lot. And I don't know who is going to step up. Cody has always seemed very quiet. Someday has always seemed very quiet. Maybe it's Ryoma could do it, or one of the new people stepping in, but it's difficult because you have to learn on the fly what your new game plan is, because you're already in the middle of the season. So top 3 means that not only are these guys coming in and you're finding the same level of cohesion that other teams are going to have, but you also have like a lot of skilled people coming in. So it's a tough sell for me for top 3, but I definitely think this could be an improvement, because I didn't think the team was working super well together. Just like when you watch plays and things like that, like TP coordinations and some stuff.
Okay, PapaSmithy, are you guys gonna? Do you think you will make top 3? Like, are you as confident in the caller that this will happen? And also, do you think that it'll be TL and Cloud9 that are up there with you?
I think 100 Thieves number 1. Who cares about the other 9?
Okay, there we go.
That's all I care about. Numero uno. I think obviously we make these changes aspiring for as high as we can get. Aspiring for Worlds is really the goal there. I'm actually not that fussed about what it looks like in regular season, if I'm going to be honest with you, as long as it's top 8. But I think it's one of those things where you can kind of justify any team being top 3 if you got the high roll on every single player and also the synergy side worked. So it definitely does feel like it's a building up PapaSmithy take. Awkwardly, I have to leave after this call, so I don't know. Your show's great, but at the end of the day, we look at this as I said before. It's like we truly believe that if we ran, the other roster, the old roster, all the way through, we wouldn't make it to Worlds, and then connected to that, we wouldn't be able to give Contracts and Poom a chance in LCS. We look at what these players can provide in an ideal setting, or what they've done kind of at lower levels of play. And I can definitely see stylistic ways that we can evolve from where we were before in order to compete at the top. I'm not really putting labels on it because I've seen so little footage of what these 5 players together look like. So there's no informed way for me to say anything other than we did our research and we thought hard about what our changes are going to be. That doesn't necessarily mean that this will be the locked 5-man roster for the rest of the season. It's just we're giving this roster everything we have at the moment, just like we did with the last one. And I feel like our strength as a staff has been growth. I think that's been the most consistent thing, is like knowing where we are and not deluding ourselves that we're number 1 or number 10 on any day, and charting a course to improve from there. And now, whatever environment I walk into tomorrow is going to be a new environment. And so we're going to start somewhere and just try and improve from there.
So I'm going to flip that around on you just a little bit, because we obviously, in your answer, and I understand why you're focusing so much on these 5 players, but obviously getting top 3 or placing high is the relationship between your 5 players and everybody else's 5 players.
Sure.
You have this background coming from a caster analyzing teams. Looking at the landscape of the LCS right now, how confident are you? Like, some people might say, hey, the LCS looks really weak outside of Cloud9 right now. Or this is going to be really tough because all these teams are so competitive, so we're going to have to really rise to the challenge. Like, how difficult do you think it'll be to place top 3 in relation to what you're seeing from these other teams?
So I don't really look at other teams as a yardstick that often now that I'm on the team side. Obviously, it was all about relative power rankings, right? When you're a caster and predictions and things like that. I feel like the upside of some of my players we see in fits and spurts, and we saw in the run and the end of summer. Like, we have some really talented players. Are they showing it and replicating it on stage in a coherent way every time? No, and that's obviously something that we have work to do. And now we have new pieces, that will interact with it in different ways. In terms of like my view on the overall level of the LCS, I think there's definitely more than just Cloud9 and the soup, as Mark Zimmerman will forever be known as.
Oh my God.
Crowning. I think there are definitely teams that are more on top of their game than they were in spring, and that gives us great learning opportunities to practice against quality teams in the summer season. So I think honestly, we've spent this whole year looking internally to be the solution to our problems rather than copying other teams or looking to what the community's thoughts are on things. And it's served us pretty well. Obviously, we've had kind of a setback in some of our planning and we're going to redouble down. But at the end of the day, I think the league is getting better, but I think our learnings are going to be our process and our improvement more over and above other teams falling apart or anything like that.
Hunted, before I give you your chance to shout out anybody, I know you really only had a chance to offer up your take. Do you have any additional thoughts based off of what you've heard?
No, I think it's all what you guys said is pretty fair.
Yeah. Well, then
The league is very competitive in this split.
Yeah,
So.
I think it's a lot better this split than last. I think FlyQuest and EG are pretty close to the levels they were at the end of the last split, maybe doing a little bit more experimentation. And then obviously CLG, TL have stepped up a lot.
You don't have TSM in there.
TSM. I mean, we'll see if we have a TSM caller.
Okay. Hunted, anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
Other than shout out to my Clash team, 1T, nothing else.
Thanks so much for the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one. Off to the
Next call
we go. While we're waiting, a couple shout outs. Thank you to Mr. Cheese for the 23 months. I love that name so much. Ari Waddle, 26 months. Mega Man Music, Insaya, Othu, Kazastraz, Pedro Polo, Enrage GG, and Cruise 44. Rebelcom, Iceman 1986 gifted 10 subs. Holy moly, thank you. Dar Zombie 13. And Fez is here. Fez, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Mobile, Alabama.
And you've been on the show before.
I have a couple times. Most notable one is when Nate Shot was on here.
Oh, interesting.
There you go.
Wait, so that's been
Nate Shot.
That's 2 years ago, I think, or close to it.
Pretty close, yeah. Right after the whole Meteos thing happened, too.
Yes.
So are you a 100 Thieves fan, or is this just crazy coincidence?
No, I'm a big 100 Thieves
Okay.
fan.
Okay.
Day one.
We're stacking them today. I love it.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Don't. Sometimes fans are.
That's okay.
We don't know how this is gonna
console
go.
them if they're down or build them up if they're happy.
Fez, what was your call in for with regards to Nate Shot? What did you talk to him about?
It was basically complaining about the lack of transparency and what he could and couldn't say, and he did a good job of just kind of beating around the bush and respecting the players, and that's pretty much what his take was on it.
Yeah.
So
Well, what is your call this time?
my call this time is that 100 Thieves will set the example that players no longer run the LCS teams. Since, this was how it was done back in the past, players would control rosters decisions, in-game decisions. And I think the LCS has changed so much with money and sponsors. They put too much into it to just have mediocre results. And I think it'll be a great change for the league. And I think PapaSmithy is leading by example, which is great.
So it's very funny
Gratitude,
because
baby. I'm loving Mark Zimmerman today on his birthday. It's my birthday too.
Good vibes all around. So this.
well, I
Go
just
ahead.
really quickly want to say it's very funny because I have one player in mind right now who I could say shows you that players don't run the LCS and that players do run the LCS over the course of just a 2 month period of time. Obviously, I'm talking about Double Lift, who's like the star of the league, got benched by TL, and I think that's an evidence of a team making a decision with like a very unpopular decision to bench a star. But then he goes to TSM, where it does feel like him and Bjerg are not just running TSM potentially, but also running the Players Association. So it's a very funny situation. Mark, what were you gonna say?
So I was going to comment a little bit on that. Like, there is still some teams who seem like they have players higher on the totem pole. As much as I love PapaSmithy, I don't know if I would give him the credit solely for this change. I feel like it's been going on for a long time and kind of building more and more, especially ever since franchising happened and organizations in general, just like a more top-down structure. So I feel like it's been going on for a little while. The thing I find really interesting about this take is that I know some players in the scene feel like it has gone too far in this direction. And I think you can
Meteos
probably
being one of them, based off a tweet I saw last night.
Yeah, I was going to say, based off Meteos' tweet about how he seemed to say that like the team wasn't even consulted about this decision. It felt like it came from the higher ups, not the opinions of his teammates. I do think it's an overall interesting conversation to have about, like what does G2 look like? What does TSM look like? Does there need to be a prescriptive thing that every team does, or can it be organization by organization and those kinds of things?
Yeah. So yeah, PapaSmithy, what do you think of this? Whenever you're hearing this and your perspective as a GM,
I kind of agree with Mark in terms of like there are a lot of different successful orgs that are built in different ways. Like the joke about G2 was that Perks was the GM, right? And obviously all the rumors about how the rosters came together in years past. And if you make a roster like that, doing great. I think when it comes to core pieces of your roster, like Bjergsen at TSM. I mean, obviously now there's equity involved, so it's slightly different. But even before the equity was a consideration, you probably want to run the moves by him. There's probably something to learn there. But when it comes to players running rosters, kind of like they did in, I guess, 5-6 years ago, like infancy of LCS, the issue there becomes is that the information, like the players will always focus on certain snapshots, and they'll always be kind of colored from the competition aspect and being in the trenches, I guess, is one way to say it. Whereas theoretically, the GM is zoomed out enough to try to make informed moves. And as people would have taken from the Last Dance, you also kind of have to make moves about where your team's going, where your team is, and judging what the right move is at the right time. I think C9 has been really good at when they released Impact or when they released Jensen, like they made educated guesses, and then Svenskara in the past off season, where they're able to judge really well what they had in hand in order to decide what to let go. And that's obviously the sort of kind of like people planning, future planning stuff that as a player, it's always optimizing for the next victory, whether it's the next trade victory, the next game victory, the next championship. So I think it's natural that it goes this way when the sums of money we're talking about are involved. But if you have a team that's already working really, really well based off player relationships and you have core pieces with big says, I'm not going to tell you it's wrong, because I think there's great examples that show it can definitely still work.
Hunter from Golden Guardians in the chat says there's player-run teams, owner-run teams, and very, very few GM-run teams, but all three exist. Do you think that that's a fair assessment?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, well, now I have a follow-up. What would you classify 100 Thieves as? And I'm sure there's leeway between all three as well. It's more of a spectrum than like just one. But what do you think 100 Thieves falls most under? I feel like I have a guess, but
I think people don't really know what a general manager is, and because it's not necessarily created equally at all orgs. The GM role can encompass many different things. I would say that people obviously know of me or know me from casting, and they're like, how do I work out whether he's doing a good or bad job? Like, is it if they had a good draft on the weekend, because he used to talk about draft? Is it if I agree with his roster decisions? Is the LCS team's finish, my kind of core competency? And the answer is all of it is kind of a yes and no, but the big picture is like, what does 100 Thieves League of Legends, which obviously encompasses LCS, Academy, and Next, look like, as a snapshot every 6 to 12 months? And is it moving in a direction that you can identify and in any ways judge? Is it, developing and cultivating talent? Is it winning championships? Is it appreciably better or worse than it was a year ago? Is kind of where the GM is. But to zoom in on your question, I made it very clear when I joined that it was either me running the whole show, I wasn't interested. And they've given me pretty much carte blanche to do whatever I want. That doesn't mean that we pick Aatrox because PapaSmithy wants it. And I hate the champion Karma, and yet we'll probably end up picking it at some point. But when it comes to what we're about and what we stand for, outside of certain things, in general, that's going to be kind of my direction, I guess.
And then I guess this is a chance to talk about it if you want. Did you guys, when you were looking into the changes that you're going to try and make, was there asking player input? Did you hey, Ryoma, what do you think the problems are on the team? Who do you think would, who would you swap out? Like, what level of like, what kind of things did you guys talk about with the entire team?
So obviously you have kind of check-ins with players, and if they want to volunteer something, like you take it and you try to treat it with respect. You don't like, hear one person shit talking another and then tell the other player, by the way, this guy said that. Like, that's just like scumbag. But I think in general, if you can isolate players from direct roster input, it's really, really good for the players, because it's such a burden for them to have to think, was I the reason this happened, and focus on more than just their own performance, because there's so many variables going on. There's social dynamics, power dynamics, playstyle things. I'm not interested in like my players playing games, and I haven't had that experience at all, but I think it's definitely behooves the players to obviously listen if people want to talk, but try to make an informed decision, because we're supposed to be the people who are zoomed out of, where this whole process is going. Their job is to play good on the weekend or play good on the scrims. So I don't think that asking the players about roster changes, because the other thing is like the stories you hear is like this player was promised that this player would join the off season and then they didn't join, and then that player's tilted for the whole season because they were led to believe that something's going to happen. Like at that point, at that point it's the GM tanking the team by promising something they couldn't deliver. So I think a certain amount of separation has to be there, and I think it helps both sides because it allows you to evaluate both the management side and also the players on their core competencies.
Fez, any additional thoughts on this or follow-ups?
So I really wanted to ask Papa, from being a caster to going to being a GM, you worked in the Korean scene. Obviously, there was a lot of very talented players there, very big heads to a certain extent. Is there a big difference coming here to NA and kind of seeing the GM spot and seeing how the teams were run as far as your experience?
So obviously there was a degree of separation in Korea, right, because of the language barrier. And if I see players at the studio, they're going to put their best foot forward. They're going to be nervous because they don't speak English, or they're going to be, they've already got their makeup on. They're already, in the game mode. So like, when it comes to like having, been around orgs, the only org I really ever was pretty close with was Cloud9, and to a certain degree G2 as well. I did some consulting with Cloud9 a few off seasons. The Reaper story is pretty famous one of recommending him. I looked at some of their roster changes, or when they ran like 6-7 man rosters, and gave them advice. And then G2, just like meeting them and kind of watching them scrim and stuff. So when it comes to how teams worked, I thought I knew a lot of that, and some of it's pretty self-evident, or you pick up through content or logic. But the minutia of what does a week look like was definitely a learning for sure. And I know people have kind of made their minds up about North American pros and North America, and effort is like the big thing that always people talk about, like lazy players and this sort of idea. But I'm surrounded by people putting in hundreds of games on and off stage. So I guess I don't have the same POV that people come away with.
Hey, Fez, thank you so much for the call. Is there anything that you want to say before we move on to the next caller?
Yeah, Papa, I will shut up about Ryoma now. He's slowly proving me wrong, so I'll stop, bitching at the server.
Step by step.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Fez. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break to talk about our sponsor, Alienware. Loading up their page right now, alienware.com/Travis. Go check it out. There's a nice picture of me up at the top, and then a video where I really should update the thumbnail on it because it is lackluster. Anyway, you go check it out. We showcase, it's a custom page in which we showcase a lot of the hardware that we use here. In fact, we did that survey last week, and I really appreciate people providing feedback, because one of the things I heard from you guys is that you love to hear me talk more about the specific products themselves. And I think heading over to alienware.com/Travis is a perfect example of where we've been able to talk about the specific products that we have used, and not all of these, or it doesn't showcase all of them. We're going to try to update and add more of that to that. But, the Area 51M that we've used for our live broadcasts, and the Alienware Aurora that I'm using right now to stream this, the 34-inch curved gaming monitor that I'm using right now so that I can have a bunch of different information on my screen. You can go check all that out It's really cool to see what we've been able to do with them. Travis 10 off Q2 is the code that you will want to use in order to save 10% on your purchase from Alienware. And I really appreciate everybody checking that out. A lot of people have been tweeting me lately saying, hey, I got this monitor. Hey, I got this computer. I used your code. And it's been really cool to just hear all of that from everybody. So either way, thank you to Alienware for their support of the show. Thank you all for checking them out. There's a link in the description if you guys want to do that. And now I'm going to pull this page down, and hopefully PapaSmithy comes back because his webcam disappeared. He should be back shortly. Either way, thank you, He's back. Thank you, Alienware, for your support of the show.
We're sponsored by NZXT, so you know.
Yeah. Okay, I understand why you hid. Anyway, we've got another caller coming up in just a second.
I hope it's 3 out of 3, Mark. Keep it up.
Mark, you muted.
Well, yeah, sorry. We'll see. I forget what I start to forget what I pulled. It's been so long.
Thank you, Darth Zombie, for the 10 months. X Solvark for the 5 subs, and also for gifting one yourself, or for resubbing yourself. 08501337, America Vespucci, Big White Goon, Claims, Solsticisms, 28. Always fun having to figure out how to pronounce these. Bodies by Bert, who said, going strong on my Alienware M15. Shout out to Alienware. Thank you. Danny Grimm, 13 months. Smoke Dog. I'm Elvis 4. Still waiting on Mark. Sorry, I'm still reading these while we're waiting for him. Aldor.
He's just screening for the next person to butter me up. It's great.
There we go. Okay, well, let's see if how this one goes. Crew 1988. Where are you calling from?
Stockton, California.
Stockton. Okay. Wait, this is like Central California, right?
Yeah, Northern Central.
Yeah, okay. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Why Ryoma would have been the better pick to swap out over Meteos being the M-game leader, and how it's going to negatively affect the team overall and their season and their whole split.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Spicy.
Had to come eventually.
The main reason I see it, Ryoma was kind of useless last split because he could never, ever beat Zoe. I would scream, like, I'm a 100 Thieves fan. I have all 3 teams' jerseys. But
Appreciate
Ryoma
it.
didn't.
Thank you for your
yeah,
patience.
oh, no, I do. I love you guys. But Ryoma just doesn't put enough effort to where he's winning. Maybe he does something better for you guys during practice, during scrims. We don't get to see that. You guys get to judge that. But from what we've all seen, last split, he lost every game to Zoe almost. Most of the matches you guys should have won against C9, against TSM, was because of Zoe, not because of anybody else's team ways, how they played. He just could never beat her. I mean, I've never seen someone eat so many bubbles in a game. This split he's doing a little bit better. I do agree. His game with Oriana and Azir were good, but overall, he didn't try to help anybody. Went up with the ganks on Meteos. He left Meteos. Meteos died, and you guys proceeded to lose from there. I just feel overall you guys are going to lose more now because you have Contracts, who's a good game player, but he is not a leader at all. You lost an aspect of your team to where now you're going to rely on nothing but rookies and Someday, who's a god, but he doesn't speak English super well. He's never been an in-game leader, and even though he's carrying like he usually can do, it's just going to be more of a tragic end for your guys' season.
Mark, before PapaSmithy charges in, what is your take on Ryoma right now, just so that we can have a third-party take on him as a player?
It's a little hard for me to know exactly where he's at because I think when the season started in spring split, I was negative on him like everyone else, and he didn't really impress right at the beginning. And over the course of the split, as 100 Thieves started improving, he didn't seem like a liability anymore. He was doing well. Whether or not you still think he should be being played over North American talent or something like that's a totally different, argument to make. He was not too far. I would still probably put him in the bottom half of the LCS mids, but not like, oh my God, this guy is a sieve and he's just getting destroyed in the mid lane or anything like that. So I thought he was improving and showing all the stuff that Papa was talking about and why they would have wanted to play him and improvements and all this stuff. And so going to summer, I was looking forward to seeing more of that. And it's not like it went away, but I think the mid jungle synergy for 100 Thieves has been pretty terrible. And so it makes it now hard to judge. Is Ryoma regressing? Is it their team strategy because they're mostly sticking him on control mages? Is that a team decision? Is that his champion pool being limited? And then also, is this partially due to Meteos and him maybe not working well together? So I have not been impressed by Ryoma this split. I think his stats have been okay. He is playing.
Die again. Oh,
What's that?
my cam might be dying again.
No,
we're
I
good.
think it's okay.
So yeah, personally, it's a little hard for me to judge. I haven't been as impressed this split as I was at the end of the last split, but the whole team is not playing well. Like I would say the same thing about Someday. I'm not nearly as impressed by Someday this split as I was last split. So I that's where I'm at. I'm still waiting for a little bit more, and especially with a new jungler, seeing how they work together.
Okay, PapaSmithy, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is based on available info, while I disagree with some of the inferences, like I can see how those conclusions are reached, right? And I think that there's definitely truth in some of our weaknesses. For example, the homework for the off season was for Ryoma and Meteos to duo more, and like just do a lot of work to work on mid jungle synergy, because it was something that in spring we largely played away from mid. It just kind of evolved into that, and you can draw your inferences as to why. It's always a mixture of factors. And so in the off season, they duoed a lot. Meteos was in Challenger. Ryoma has been the highest ranked mid in solo queue for like better part of 2 months. So like they trained down the house and things were looking really, really good in early scrims. And then the moment stage comes around, there definitely has continued to be some desyncs there. And I think it's fair to say that there definitely is still teething issues. And I think, I mean, I'll ask Mark a question. Like, if you look back on spring, what's your power ranking of Ryoma for mids? Because I think there was one like halfway through the split. Like, where would you have him roughly? I know this is like obviously thinking about it, but at the end, sure.
Yeah, at the end, I would probably have had him around 7th. I thought he was better than Aka. I thought he was better than Froggen. I thought he was better than.
Oh boy, you're gonna. That's a controversial take. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's.
Don't derail me, dude.
Froggen will have to continue.
I think I might have had him around Golden Glue. I remember we did the mid split one. I had Golden Glue 6, but I think I might have dropped him a little bit from there, but I don't remember. Is there another mid? Oh, well, obviously better than Crown and probably better than Pobelter for that split and how things were going. Mm-hmm. So I think he would have been around 6.
And I had him at 6th personally. You know, when I did my rankings afterwards, because I still rank all the players just to kind of understand where we are. And I feel like just that is enough for people like failed experiment and like have big hot takes and talk about the power of import spots and things like that. But at the end of the day, the mid pool that I had open to me in the off season wasn't massive. And there were definitely players that went unsigned that people will point to and things like that. And I'm not interested about talking about why I didn't sign players. Like, I don't think that's correct. Like, I don't want to ever reduce someone's chance of getting signed or anything like that. I prefer to talk about why I signed the players I do. I looked at Ryoma and I was like, this is a player coming from definitely a less developed region. We look at his play in a vacuum and we like a lot of what we see and we see upside in it. We like his communication and what he can bring. And I think I had it at 6th in the spring season and like hoping that in a high roll sense, it would get up there, you know, top 3, top 4 in summer. And obviously summer's not over, so we can't fully judge that. But like that's what I was predicting when I was looking at what I hoped this player could be. I wasn't living in any fantasy land about, you know, coming in and stomping or anything like that. And I feel like just the fact that he's an import makes people say like that's the wrong use of an import spot. But I think stuff like that is so weird that people kind of think about things that way. And in general, what we see in practice and what we see in solo queue has never really reached the stage in the way we would want to. I think towards the end of spring we were seeing it. And then he had a really poor week 1 of summer. But since then, regardless of results, I think overall his contribution has been strong. So it's honestly on him to keep building. Like, we don't see him as a finished product by any means. And there's obviously no guarantees about anything in the future when it comes to Ryoma. But if you look at your 20 scrims and your solo queue and how hard they're working, and you make your inferences about a player, I think that wealth of information outweighs stage games to a point. But over time and over the course of a year, obviously stage games are going to become more and more important in that calculation. And he knows that for summer. Like, he knows he has to perform on the stage. And, I have my confidence and I enjoy working with him, but he's going to be judged by his output in summer. And we'll go from there.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mark, you and I on this show, I think I saw LS in the chat earlier, and we had a conversation about this with him, but we've had it elsewhere too, is like, people do seem to think that import slots should be... It's very funny because you hear a lot of different things. You hear people say you should find a really strong player in that role. Then you hear people say, oh, you brought over this really strong player who won a world championship. They're just retiring. Like they're not here to win. They're just here to collect a paycheck.
Why don't we just be plain? Like, North America cannot draw talent like someday in 2017. Like, top player in the world comes to North America. It's not going to happen. Like, at this point, North America has lost a lot of its draw when it comes to attracting talent. For a long time, it was money, right? There was a lot more money in North America than there were in other scenes. To some degree, that's still true, but relatively, it's not true to the same extent anymore. Franchising in Korea is going to only increase salaries, and salaries are already improving there. Europe, obviously, it's not the same pay packets, but it's getting to the point where the idea of leaving home and things like that becomes less attractive to come to North America. North America has its share of issues, of course.
We have a giant coronavirus situation here right now.
Your word's not mine. And, in the off season, obviously you go to the teams and say, hello, can I please have your star player? And they mostly say no. And then the next step is you try to convince the player who has offers in Europe or offers in other regions, like, come to North America instead. And with at the time, 9th, 10th placed North American team with a GM that was a pretty good caster. And why are they coming to my team, right? Like, I don't have the runs to show. They've heard the stories about North American solo queue, and that had multiple players tell me, I can't come because from what I hear, the solo queue is going to make us worse. I'm going to become a worse player from playing in solo queue there. It's going to hurt my development. And these are all the factors when you're trying to attract talent. And when they say things like that, I can't be like, no, the solo queue is great, because, it's not. And if they tell me, oh, yeah, I'd love to join, please give me all of the money, is that the player I want? Not particularly. So what actually getting the talent you want, like motivated, has something to prove, will come in and work hard and has all of the talent. And it's kind of not necessarily like a complete piece, because then, of course, you get into the allegations of retirement home. But when it comes to the point where it's like, this player is ready to peak, like I would say Niski, for example, when he came back from Splice, like that's a player where he's kind of 4th, 3rd best mid in Europe at that time, and you're picking up definitely while he's still on the upswing. Like, that's a really great pickup. But that was even now, like 2 years ago. I think getting a player of that level for a North American team, short of a top 1 team in North America, it's just not going to happen.
And based off the recent MVP wins, it would tell you that Niski is not, he's mostly carried by his jungler. Go ahead, Mark.
Hilarious.
You're grouchy on your birthday. Continue.
It's my birthday, and you cut me off
Go.
to make a C-tier joke. I was going to say, I think a big thing, too, for me is just being, not making sweeping statements about what's a good use of an import slot on, a specific person because of another person or something. There probably are some players, like Papa's talking about, who are coming, and it's what is available to them. Their options have been drying up in other spots, and this is now where they can get the most money, and it's better than what their other options were. Sure. That's not someone who is, necessarily a great import, but just because that person exists doesn't mean that all, European players who are in their prime or whatever, just had a bad split, are now horrible. Like PoE came over, people memed the hell out of him for power of money and shit, and it looked kind of sus for a little bit with how Optic was going. But then he went to CLG and did great, and then he went to FlyQuest and got them to the finals. And like, you know, I think you can look at some of the younger people. Ryoma and Aika have been weirdly compared in my head this entire. Like, I don't know why people compare them directly. Like, Ryoma's in a minor region and has never. He's like, the question is, big fish, small pond, or like, you know, actually going to be really good, and he just needs the opportunity. Whereas if I look at Aika, at least he's been in Europe the whole time, you know, and he could have potentially broken through there. Ryoma's never had a chance to break through. And so it's one of those things where people have weirdly compared them when their situations are totally different. And I think like I can say I kind of like one and I don't really like the other option. And that's not to say that I think that they should be gone or anything, but just like that's one of those ones from this year that I'm like, why are people comparing these two players? Yes, they have both been pros for like how long was Ryoma a pro for? Was it 2 or 3 years or something?
It's 3.
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah, so like, yes, he's been a pro for a little bit, but like Niski was a pro for a while. To your point, he came to North America, back to Europe, back to North America, and he's finally peaking. So, you know, like someone can improve in one environment, and the other one has been in a good environment the whole time, or something. Like as much as the problems we talk about in North America solo queue, from what I understand from the Oceanic server, there's definitely like. I know people who have gone over there from North America who were like,
I mean,
low diamond and they get challenger.
That happens. And then there's a lot of pros that pass through there. Shorter Race was there. Dokla was there.
Yep.
So for sure. And it's just this weird phenomena where people, for some reason, always want me to convince them on Ryoma. Like that's always things like, just convince me on him, you know, like, and it's like, that's what his play is supposed to do. And obviously, if you think that his play in LCS isn't up to your standard, you're absolutely entitled to your own opinion, for sure. It's just at the end of the day, we see what he does internally and hopes he gets there within a realistic time frame. And we will give him every single opportunity to try to shine. I know you read this on stream before, Travis, you know, what I said about Ryoma, where it's like, we evaluated this guy. We thought that he had the upside to really compete at the LCS level, and I accept the view that some people believe he still doesn't do that. But in scrims and in practice and his attitude, he does. And so how much time he gets is always on, I guess, me. Like I'm the person that eventually will have to call time if I feel like he's no longer improving or no longer is he realistically going to get there. As I guess I made the call on a starting 5 that feels like it peaked at the end of spring. But we definitely see the evidence in practice and his solo queue habits and his attitude. But everyone's on a timer, including me in this job. So all I can do is say that he was the option we liked the most. He still is that option. And what happens, happens.
Crew, Twitch chat. Sorry, really quick. Oh, unless you had a thought real quick.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, crew, Twitch chat is saying that this is becoming a 100T apologist show. And so I want to give you a chance here to jump back in. I know we've gone a little off topic by making it broader about Ryoma, but I don't know, is any of this swaying you or giving you a different perspective?
Well, the whole thing about what Papa's saying is he's trying to build him up and everything. We can just go and put that same aspect with NA talent. Look at Golden Glue. Everybody and their mother says, oh, yeah, he's the best scrim god he is, but he's never, ever proven it to be separated to be one of the best mid laners ever. And yes, Ryoma's still young and he's still building up on everything, but I hope Papa, for his sake and the team's sake, this needs to be looked at quite vigorously and quite quickly because he has been mediocre for the majority of his time being here. And I understand that he's new, but
3 months.
Yeah, I know. When he's all last split too, though, he was mediocre.
Yeah, but that last split was a 3-month-long split, is my point.
I got
And to be fair, they finished top 3 in the regular season, and like Papa said, had a close series versus TSM. So
every game that wasn't Zoe, yeah.
but
I think the one thing that you conflate a little bit is like this idea that like Ryoma's really weak to Zoe, which I think is reducing our team. Played very poorly around Zoe. It's a very fair statement. I'm not just talking about the Niski games where he ran around and killed everyone. That was definitely our mid laner getting roamed on and getting like that was absolutely some mid diff going on there, and Ryoma would say that himself. But I think as a whole, we definitely were susceptible to that champion, in that it wasn't like the Zoe was just solo killing mid lane, right? It was that the Zoe was roaming, and on every roam, someone was eating a bubble and dying. And that's a fair criticism. It's definitely something we looked at and we were like, do we really have to ban Zoe? That's awkward. We don't have any extra bans to do that. But like when it comes to like the 1v1, like I don't think Zoe's kind of the same factor there. And we've been better against it recently, but you definitely have bogey champions, right? That's for sure.
So one thing I'll say too is like you can be disappointed in Ryoma and the crew and say like, I don't think he's going to work out. I don't want him on the team, but that doesn't mean in summer there's a good alternative. You can say maybe they should have got Demonte, but they had just finished pretty highly, so maybe they want to keep running with Ryoma. At this point, Soligo, we've seen him before. Not super impressive. Yes, he's North American talent.
I think I want to cut you off a little bit. I think people really decided on Soligo super early. Like they decided on Soligo last year in a bad situation, and then I guess that he's relegated forever because now he's a meme for not performing and not having an LCS win. What I'll say is, watch his academy games and watch them closely, because he has actually built a lot in his time in academy, and he's grown up a lot. He came in very, very quiet. And I think that's something that hurts. Like, kind of like how Anda had that reputation of not being a great communicator. And I think he is developing a lot. Does that mean he's going to get another chance? Maybe not, because of just how poor the first one went. But I think Soligo's for sure a good player. And that's not just me bigging up my academy mid laner. Yeah,
and I don't mean to say he's trash forever either. I just mean that in the context of this split, like that's the one swap you can really look at, Soligo or him. And I don't think it's clear cut that Soligo deserves a spot over Ryoma based off performance. Ryoma, when you look at his stats on a 1-5 team, they're okay. I think you can say he's playing control mages that are relatively safe, but his CSD is not bad. It's negative 1.5, which isn't incredible or great. Or great or terrible, excuse me. But he has the second highest forward percentage. This document has not been updated for this weekend, so I'll have to see how much that changes. It's a small sample size right now, but he would be third in the league for forward percent coming into the week. He doesn't get a ton of jungle help. He'd be seventh, I think, for jungle proximity difference. So like he's someone who seems to just be doing okay. He's first in DPM, obviously, once again, playing a lot of control mages. So when we talk about the fact that they're a 1-5 team, I don't think Ryoma had been even the second worst player on the team in terms of performance so far this split. Like the caller was talking about replacing Ryoma versus some of these other things. I think there are people who have been playing worse, and I think it's very understandable for why these were the two roster moves that 100 Thieves made.
And by the way, Mark, I keep a more updated spreadsheet, and I can tell you that after this weekend, he's second now in FWD. So, crew, one question I have for you, though, but we have to wrap really quickly because we've been talking for a long time. But how long do you think a player should get? Because that, like, the golden glue, and I don't want to harp on this because I know it's just in passing, but the golden glue Ryoma thing is not a great comparison given the time. And I'm just curious, like, given Ryoma had 3 months, a split that was really weird where people were like transitioning to home situation, all that stuff, like, how long would you give a player if you were a GM?
For Papa's sake, I would probably look at the rest of summer and have to question it. But just like you guys have all said, there's not a big pool for them to go and grab somebody to throw them into the whole mix. Because if you want to get an import, you have to have somebody that can actually communicate with everybody. Right now, the communication is fine for the language barrier, but it is not fine for their actual playability and how Meteos and everybody are playing together. Meteos has had no attention to mid. I don't know if he doesn't trust Ryoma or trying to push it forward. But in the long run, I think after Contracts is here, Contracts is a way more aggressive player. He does go in all the time. He will go in and try to help mid out a lot. I believe he will anyways. So if this whole split still shows Ryoma being okay and not carrying some hard games with Contracts help, it'd be a good time to look at somebody else and see who would be more valuable overall.
Well, hey, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to say as we move on to the next caller?
I appreciate the time. Thank you, Papa, and everybody. Again, I love the team, Papa. I've got plenty of guys' stuff. For the
Appreciate
meme though, I think you guys need to put Sneaky on the Academy League team. That way you can, the product you guys could sell just off Sneaky and Meteos would bring the company tenfold even more.
And bring high
Well, let's
end.
crowdfund that. I don't got the money for that. So crowdfund it.
Have a good one, crew.
Everyone
guys,
donate
thank
to
you.
Sneaky with the message "Join 100 Thieves."
Yeah. All right.
All right.
I think that's tampering, Mark. We got another caller coming up here in just a second.
What are you talking? Did you want to do a ad break first?
We only did the only ad break we have for this episode, Mark.
Oh,
More
we're
Papa,
not.
baby. Let's do it.
We're not popular. Okay.
No, we're gonna do some sub stuff. Okay. Aldor, thank you. Oh, Get Nice, State Farm Analyst, thank you. Shilly.
So my take is about how NA they place way too much value on things like experience and brand name, which can actually be bad for teams and the league. Because if a player gets bad experience and develops bad habits, it can actually be bad for the team's playstyle. They can be too rigid. The player's value gets too high, brand value gets too high. They can start playing themselves above the team and stuff. And I think that something that would benefit NA greatly is more programs like 100 Thieves Next that Papa has been getting going to develop more young talent. And another thing that NA doesn't really keep in mind is that it can actually develop younger players into having someone with value. Like, I'm someone that watches the LDL, the Chinese secondary league, a lot. And every year there's at least 5 to 10 talents that come in to the league and immediately become big stars that you can market around.
So Palpitoad, welcome to the show. I didn't get a chance to introduce you, which
Yeah.
I know Twitch chat thought Mark was laughing at your take. We were
I was
laughing
not laughing at his take. I
was reading subs. Normally, I introduced you to the show, but you went head first in, which I appreciate.
knows that
My bad.
No,
it's
it was
okay.
so funny, dude. I loved it. And then just seeing Twitch chat's reaction just sent me over the edge. It was so funny.
Yeah. So Palpitoad, welcome to the show. Thank you for sharing your take. Where are you calling from?
Yeah.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Edmonton, Canada.
Okay, Canada. Okay. Sorry, one more time. Can you just in a single sentence give me the short version of your take? Because I was a little distracted.
Basically, NA puts too much emphasis on things like experience and brand value, which you can get by developing young players instead.
Would you say that 100T is guilty of that?
No, I said what 100 Thieves Next is doing is kind of similar to what I think NA should be doing with every org.
But with their LCS team, do you think that they are putting too much value on experience and?
I think with the Meteos roster, I would say yes, but I do like that they're giving what's the name of the new support again?
Boom.
Yeah, Poom. I do like that they're giving him a shot. Always
Is
good
it
to see new
Really
faces.
Poom or is it Poo Me?
Boom.
Boom.
Okay.
I'm glad we got that verified. Okay, so
I did tell him to name change, to be fair. I was like, come on.
I was going to say, just cut the E off. It's the same phonetics.
He's thinking about it. He's thinking about that. It's a French-Canadian thing. I don't know.
it's
Okay.
sounds about right. All right, so we'll just go with you, PapaSmithy. So, do you think that in North America people are too obsessed with legacy and that type of stuff?
So it's a complicated question, right? What I will say is that I sometimes look at academy rosters and don't really understand what they're doing with their academy roster in terms of the spirit of what academy should be.
Can you give me an example?
No. But
I think you know what you mean.
You know what I mean. And it's so easy to trumpet next purely because no one else is doing what we're doing. But what I took from that was it was so easy to make next. It wasn't hard. It's not like I was scouring Diamond 1 for like one tricks that could be good. Like there's just so many 16, 17-year-old high school kids who couldn't play academy or collegiate or LCS because they're in school, who are like high challenger. And it's just like, I'll take those, please. And then now suddenly I have a lot of great young players. So on the one hand, like pat on the back, what a genius I am. And on the other hand, it wasn't hard. So I think that's the part that puzzles me, is that there is a lot more NA talent than people know, mostly because a lot of academy rosters just seem to be recycling players that I think at this point are very unlikely to ever be full-time LCS players.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I last off season had we did a show on here once where I like talked about some of this stuff, just about how many people are long time. And some of them, like,
academy lifers, I think, is what you're looking for.
Yeah. And like you said, we talked earlier about how some of them haven't got their first shot in the LCS yet, but it feels like, well, then give them that shot or don't. But stop, like, you don't need to put them in academy for their, 8th time or whatever it is. And so I definitely agree on that level. I think there's some people in the LCS who haven't got it done in a long time, and they're probably still a level above some of this academy talent and some of the other people. So it can be probably tempting to go for them, but I don't admit to really seeing the point to it, because like we were talking earlier in the show, you're either pushing for Worlds and that's your goal for that year, or, I mean, everyone's goal at probably the start of the year should be Worlds, but like you can admit that like we're more talent development focused this year or something, and some teams don't feel like they make that, and they load up on talent that there's just like no way that this lineup was ever going to win, and then they don't actually commit to developing talent once that's made apparent through the first split of spring, which is yeah. But I don't know if that's brand value so much as like, we don't want to, we'll just do the thing because I've watched this guy for 5 years and I know what to expect.
So I generally want to think like, hey, we should be loading up our academy teams with all this hidden talent, and clearly EU is able to do some really cool stuff finding talent and their
it's
base.
It's not fair to one-to-one compare it to
right.
Europe.
I
the
don't mean
ERLs
to.
and academy are so different.
Yeah. And I don't mean to make it to one-to-one. It's just like my only, like, let's put it this way. With FlyQuest, they sub and mash. And I go, really? We're subbing and mash? Like, I remember interviewing this guy so long ago. I didn't, like, it's wild. But then he pops off and people think he did really well. In his, especially his first game. And I'm like, oh, I guess I can't, have that opinion, or at least it's not as valid. And so I think that's one interesting take on it, is like we do see sometimes people that have been academy lifers pop up and seem to be really good. They don't seem to stick around for very long. It's hard to think of somebody who was in academy for a very long time and then they showed up in LCS and suddenly they carried hard. But I think that's one interesting thought, and I'm curious to your guys' opinion on that. The other thing is, like, I do think some people say, like, why do we have certain players like Darshan in academy or whatever? But PapaSmithy, is there not a need to have like some veterans down there to help like level up the rookies that are on the team?
I think it depends a lot on coaching stuff, whether there's value there. I mean, Darshan is someone who I think will be a fantastic coach. So I'm sure he has huge value for Raz and the team in Golden Guardians Academy. And he's actually just been popping off in summer. So respect to him. He's actually been playing really well in the Academy League. I guess, to your point, if you're a contending org with like a couple of pieces you're not that like married to, then having a similar level player who might have upside in academy, like maybe like a meta resistant player, maybe just someone stable when you have a player that could pop off or feed in LCS is fine. Like I think if you're at a certain level, like having the piece under it be a competitive piece can be good. I guess the only thing sometimes I see is a team that's far away from contending and their pieces are at the same level in academy, then it's just like, what is this org building to? Like, where is it going? And that's the question I ask, because I know coming back to like my first pitch of what 100 Thieves would be, people remember I talked about a development roster, and then they see someday Meteos, Cody, right? Like, and these are players who are not really traditionally development pieces. I think it's because obviously that video was made before I had signed any players. And at that point, given that we were, again, 9th, 10th best North American org that had a pretty good rep in terms of like what we're about and the people in it, but in terms of league at the time, we had a lot left to be desired. I was realistic that we would have to try and build something, and probably would be very weak roster coming in. And that, through signing Meteos and retaining someday, we were able to build something that could contend early. But I feel like the people that just zoom in on the LCS right now and they're like 1-5, you know, like they're not doing very well. I feel like I'm able to look at what we're building towards an academy and through next and kind of see the development clearly happening. And then the Poom story is one where he hasn't played yet. I don't want to put extra pressure on him, but he was an amateur player 5 months ago, and now he's playing an LCS. And I think that's pretty fucking cool. So that's the sort of stories I want to write, and that's the sort of org I want to build. And that's why things like import spots open so I can import the best Korean player doesn't really interest me that much. It's more about where can I find talent that can grow to become something special, and you got to take bets, you know, multiple bets to actually have some of them pay off.
Speaking of like that kind of talent development thing, one of the things I'm always like kind of sad about is it hardly ever feels like outside of Cloud9, there is like that young talent that shows up and pops off, and even more like that org that gets a bunch of it and is suddenly really good and everyone's surprised. Like what has happened in Korea with Damwon and Griffin before them, and like it happens with so many Chinese teams. Like it's just like, oh my god, who are these guys? They weren't even here last split. Now they're killing it. You know, so like do you think that that is a North America problem in terms of like we might not have the talent to do what these other regions are doing, or you think it's like we're just worse infrastructure wise at finding, nurturing, and getting those rosters or those players to succeed?
I think North America's in a unique spot where you have Europe that has, through the ERL and all the teams there and all the regions and size of server, like that level of competition at a secondary level. Like I'm watching the Spanish League final, and it's in a massive stadium with Ibai and like, you know, huge celebrities involved with the production. Like Academy is the polar opposite of that, and that's only that's literally one, you know, thread of one country in the ERL. So like that's that. Korea has a, you know, it's famous for having the highest percentage of ranked players, and a history of esports which is, you know, since the StarCraft days. So that's hard to emulate. China has insanely massive player base. And multiple, like every org has like 5 teams, like the 13-year-old team and stuff like that. And that's not going to happen here either. So we're very much in a pickle when it comes to what North America is or isn't. And I think it's kind of on the orgs to solidify a direction and stick to it. For sure, things are stacked against us in some ways, but I think from there, people haven't taken a long, hard look at what is our org and where are we going, more so than just is our roster contending this split, yes, no. And to be fair, when you have new owners coming in that want to win now, it's, you know, it's easy to see how that doesn't happen. But my hope is that some stability comes, and obviously the talk about LCS being profitable next year and stuff, the hope is that with stability, we can start forging identities. And it'd be even better if every team had a different identity and were trying to compete to inform each other. Because it's, at its best, a franchise league should be 10 teams with their own competencies and their own areas they're pushing to be best in class in. And then you only share notes once a year and kind of understand what you can plan to be even better the next year.
Yeah. Mark, just let it go. Okay, we don't need that. No, I think that's really well said, PapaSmithy. Hey, Palpitoad, I want to get back to you really quickly because I know that we just sort of took your take and ran with it, which is I think what we've been doing all night. But any quick thoughts on anything that you've heard?
Yeah. So One thing that I want to bring up is that I think a lot of the reasons that like any teams don't actually go for these like solo queue players and younger players, that they're too focused on building a brand, don't really understand the concept of getting a player and developing that player's brand. DMO at one of the LPL teams has a trainee, 15 years old, who hit a Korean Challenger about number one about a month ago, and that player probably has more brand value than the players on the main roster itself. If NA can like find like a young player like that has all the hype coming into the league already, can greatly benefit a team's like, look image.
I think I think you got some. I know where you're coming from, and I think there are some specific North America issues where, some teams just don't think about academy that much. So let's just focus on the LCS side. Is that you do have this scenario where teams that have these like ace pieces, like Bjergsen or Double Lift, classically and Licorice and players like that are domestic and kind of dominant in their role. If you're a team that doesn't have one of those, you kind of just wish you had one, if you know what I mean, because it like makes roster building that much simpler. It brings fans, it brings players. They're already at a competitive level and a brand level that you're like the fourth, fifth, sixth team, or you're a new org coming in, and you're like, so even if we perfected it, we probably can't contend with those teams because they have the pieces we can't get. Do we just get some pieces that we know will get people to watch and hope it comes together? Is probably a lot more realistic to sell to shareholders than we're willing to tank multiple seasons in a row, but we have this development plan that only Cloud9 has ever succeeded with. Please trust us with your millions. Like,
Yeah.
That's just unfortunately a different pressure that I think other regions face. And it's on those orgs to challenge that, to break the mold, to do things there. But I understand how it doesn't happen, because to make it happen requires a lot of trust, and trust is at a premium sometimes, for sure.
Palpitoad, any shout outs before we move on to our next caller?
Not really. LPL is going to win Worlds again, and yeah.
Looking forward to seeing it. Thanks so much for the call.
Thank you for having me, and happy birthday to Mark Z.
Hey,
thank you.
First caller to actually wish him happy birthday. Thank you.
It's going to go to his head.
Hey, Tafo, if you're listening to the stream, I'll take you next.
He has to unmute, though. Tafo, you have to unmute. Yeah, by the way, let's all celebrate Mark's birthday together by subbing to the channel. Hilly sub for 20 months. Blossoms Boo, OPTSM fan, Quickle004, VMars, Oyang Fang, and Tafo is here from CLG, one GM to another GM. How's it going, Tafo?
Hey, it's going well. It's a good, cozy week. How are you guys?
Good. What makes it a cozy week?
I mean, it's like warm, but not too warm.
Oh,
like
the weather specifically is what you were referring to. Okay, so first off, congratulations on your 4 wins and 2 losses. Tied for second right now with half of the league.
You could forfeit the rest of your games and finish better than last split.
Yes.
It's a great spot to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I totally relate to PapaSmithy. Like, I feel like Biofrost made an interview saying like it feels like we reversed, and like I totally like it's such a short season with 18 games. You play a lot more scrim games, and like I felt like I was like trying to explain, like, do you know the little frog from Warner Brothers that performs when no one else is looking and then the guy goes crazy? Like, that's how I felt explaining CLG. I'm like, we're actually not this bad. Like, we're actually a pretty good team. Like, you know, and I'd have the scrim results of us performing, and then we go 3-15, and just like,
yeah.
Where are you calling from, by the way, Tafo?
I'm calling from my home.
Okay. In Los Angeles, California.
Yeah.
Okay, so was that why you called in, mostly just to relate?
His take that he wrote was saying that CLG is a bad team still. Wasn't that it? That you guys are overrated?
It's in a joke. So it's like, so CLG like is a bad team. They only beat bad teams. And I think the larger point I want to make is just like how, you know, League of Legends operates. Like, you don't play a perfect game. Sometimes, you know, especially in NA, it's about who makes less mistakes.
Go somewhere.
And
It's a perfect game.
You're muttering PapaSmithy, so it's very hard to hear you. But
yeah, I was like, huh.
I heard him.
It's a lot of people will say like CLG only made one of those games because the other team threw or make mistakes. I think part of League is making less mistakes. Like mistakes will happen throughout the game, whether it's like a minor lane phase issue, recalling too late, or getting to an objective too late. And I think the other part of League is like punishing mistakes as they happen. Like I feel like even the top teams will make mistakes. And so it just seems weird. I know that Mark, you wrote some comments of defending us, giving your perspective, but I think it's important to realize like, hey, like part of being a good team is being able to punish other people's mistakes and making less mistakes than your opponent.
One of the reasons I think there's this feeling on broadcast that like we're still a little hesitant about CLG are these stats, which are not great. Their record is good. They are clearly playing better than last split. We've been talking about individuals stepping up and this and that, but we have been hesitant about putting them in the same tier as some teams like FlyQuest and EG. And it basically comes down to, a bit of eyeball / stats test where these other teams that are still at 4-2 have better stats than this. You could argue have played better opponents, but even if you take out the quality of opponents, argument, there are some of these things that make it seem to us like they still have some stuff to prove, especially considering when you do take in the last split and like EG and FlyQuest were top 2 in playoffs or top 3 in playoffs, excuse me. And like, it's one of those things where opinions will change if these things keep improving, if the win rate keeps up, and if early games start going better and objectives start going in their favor earlier. And that's what we were talking about even off air, was just like a team can be playing really great in scrims and have a good win record, and still like more mistakes are happening on stage, which makes it harder for us to see it the same way.
And that's why to Tafo, I would ask, you were talking about how like the 3-15 didn't do what you saw justice, and now you're saying the 4-2, results. Obviously now the score lines are there. What differences are you seeing around that? Like, do you think are contributing to the wins that kind of like breaks this spot you were in between spring and summer?
I mean, I think overall, like, I think you're experiencing it now is like the cohesion. Again, we played Pull Belter mid-split, and adjusting to a new player, there's a lot of little things that need to be communicated, tendencies, what people like, how they think about, buffs, how do they think about objective control, how do they think about, like duo synergies like mid jungle, how do you play off of that? It's really hard to, sub a player mid-split and expect that everything's going to click. And we
did too.
Yeah. And I wish you guys the best of luck, since we're not playing you guys anytime soon, but there's a lot of growing pains. I think, overall, let's say like, you flip a coin, right? There's, sequences where you flip tails like 6 times in a row, right? It was 50-50. I'm not saying that we were like 50-50 with like every team last split. I would say it's like 40-60 or 35-65, but that's how variance kind of works. You shoot the ball from the 3-point line, and sometimes you go 0 for 12, sometimes you go 5 of 7. Like, you want to maximize your percentages and let variance play out accordingly, but that's what best of ones and 18 games get you.
Yeah. I think part of it too is like the entered, like, how do I put this? Like, it always takes time for narrative to catch up sometimes, like, and for public opinion to change. Because like you can have a great game that is absolutely just like 100% total domination, but people will not necessarily think, okay, this is now a dominant team or something, and you string together a number of them. Yeah, exactly. That's what they'll say. They had a good day, and they're not ready to believe that that's now your standard. And so, like, if CLG keeps a 66% win rate throughout the year, then it will just be like, yeah, CLG's the top team now. But for a lot of people, even outside broadcast, just public sentiment and stuff like that, you have to get, like, people need to get proven wrong a certain amount before they flip their stance on stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's like pretty fair. Overall, like, so I think overall, like, I think the broader conversation we had privately is, like, behind the scenes, we know more than, what the public gets to see in that sample size. And so sometimes it's like kind of hard to be behind the scenes, and like I think in PapaSmithy's position, like he knows way more, he's seen way more games, like he's probably making decisions based on the whole spectrum of information he's seen, and sometimes it's hard to go against like the small curtain that's been unveiled versus what we see completely behind the curtain.
Yeah, I think another thing that happens too is teams and people just naturally hear the things about them, and like if you're gonna watch. If C9 guys are watching Hotline League, they're watching for mostly them to talk about C9 for the most part. And so like when we shit on FlyQuest when they were Team Snickers, and when we shit on Immortals and we shit on Dignitas and then we shit on CLG, the CLG people take that part and focus more on the negative things being said about themselves, and it can become a little like they're only shitting on us. And I think everyone catches it at some point. We definitely got it plenty on when we were cursed back in the day and struggling and shit. Like every team gets it. And we even finished top 3 a couple times and still got it. And we were like, what the fuck? But that's just kind of how it goes, is you remember when you were catching shit and you kind of forget that like, oh, there's now like CLG is not catching shit. Maybe we haven't totally caught up to like, hey, you guys deserve more credit than you're getting. But like, it's not like, it was the only org that was struggling last split or this split that people are memeing all over the place. And I will say the perfect game start did not do any favors for quickly adjusting people's opinions. It was like, oh, it was a real feels bad start. Travis had a pretty mean tweet.
Did I?
Yeah.
You were talking about like franchising with CLG.
Oh yes, well, that was okay. I mean, Tafo, you're on, and awkward to say, but like, I have been critical of the CLG organization, especially this year as a whole, and so I know that people took that tweet based off of that game, and obviously a lot of it was the reaction to that. But like, I mean, we don't have to get into it in this call, but obviously there are a lot of things that I would like to see the organization do differently around building a brand and all that stuff. So I get that people probably took it as a verdict on the team, and that was not entirely that. Although immediately following a perfect game, it's kind of hard not to have something to say.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and like I don't like go home and go like, oh yeah, like this is what Travis said. Like I just like,
come on, be honest, Tafo.
Yeah, well, fine.
A little bit. Come on, it gets you.
But like it feels me, right? Like like my job, like this is one of the very highly visible jobs. I coached Mango, and that had its early tepid start where he got drunk at events and finished 17th, and I had to deal with that. But like for me, it's like I want to prove these people wrong, and like I'm just going to show up and just do better. Like, so it's like a motivator, right? Like you tell me how much we suck, it's not like directly to like the faith thing. Like I'm going to go back and be like, okay, like what is like every little thing I can do to make the team better. And that's like the mindset I take. So thank you, Travis, for actually motivating CLG to be even better, if that was your long con.
Yes, exactly. That was my long con. I'm also trying to motivate you guys to be better on the branding side, for instance. So I'm excited. Hopefully, with and even just in transparency, parent org and all that stuff. So either way, trying to think if there's anything else before we move on. But Papa or Mark, am I missing anything?
Love you, Tafo.
Love you. I thought this was a good conversation. I liked it a lot.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Tafo. Anything you want to shout out before we move on to our final batch of callers? We'll have to go through them really quickly.
I'm just excited. Like I think all the teams need to just keep pushing each other so that we can show up for Worlds. I think the better that every team is, the better results we'll get at Worlds.
Very good. Well, hey, thanks so much for the call, Tafo, and looking forward to seeing CLG continue to show up throughout the next couple games.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
See you, dude. So we lost like 15 minutes of showtime.
Yeah.
And I have 3 people, so I don't know what you want to do.
Can we do 5 minutes each for these? Are you guys cool with an extra 15 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I'll make sure we have to make sure they fly though. I'll let them know.
We'll go quick. All right. So while we're doing that, some quick shout outs to some subs. XX Acra, thank you for gifting the 10 subs. Fretful Winter, Scrapjack, Adranius 5, Ryland 123, Spars 001, Walrus Carpenter, Some Good 2, Thomas Hawk 32, Green Marlowe Guy, Beef Stews, T Punisher 247, Gaming for the Weekend, Core User Twitch. Narf051. Myranz is here. Myranz, sorry, we're running a little low on time. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Prattville, Alabama.
And what do you want to talk about on the show tonight?
So my take is that these roster changes for 100T. Oh,
You're going to push talk issue?
Yeah.
Roster changes for 100T. Continue.
First, let me say I'm a huge 100T fan. I love you, Papa.
Keep
Love
stacking
what
them
you're doing
up.
with your work. But I don't think these roster changes, specifically the Meteos to contracts change, is really going to change much. I do agree, however, with the stunt change. I mean, because let's be honest, stunt was kind of running it down every game. But I think the bigger issue at hand is that a playstyle change needs to happen. I think, one, I don't think you should ever give Someday Ornn or any other tank for that matter. I think it's a sin to put him on a tank champion and not a 1v9 carry. I think you need to give Someday his 1v9 carry, keep Meteos in the jungle for his shot calling, and don't have Ryoma play these Azirs, the hard scaling 1v9 champs. Give him the Gallios, the TFs, give Meteos the Sejuanis, the Jarvans to pretty much just invest every single resource topside, give bot lane, safe 2v2, and just let Someday 1v9 like he does, as he's proven before.
Mark?
So, I mean, we could do that, right? Like, absolutely, that's a thing that could be done, and Someday is a great player. But that strategy works until it doesn't, and there's no plan B. Like, you can't just be a team that picks the sickest counter top. Like, you can't just keep, like, raising the arms race until you're, like, blind picking Vayne top and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
We obviously have to diversify in order to be a good team, rather than, like, a flash in the pan or a gimmick.
Right, and the only reason I bring it up is just because it just seems like more times often than not, he's pretty much left on an island by himself, and Ryoma's getting the LeBlancs, the Azirs, basically the things that need the resources put into it. And I would just personally like to see more of that going towards Someday.
And completely get that. It's just chicken and egg is something that LCS viewers don't really get to have that insight on. Like, why do we play this way? Like, there has to be it can't just be random, or we're watching too much LCK and stuff. Like, it's not like that. It's very much like scrim results, what you're aspiring towards, and also certain players' tendencies. Like, you talked about kind of Meteos on Jarvan Sejuani, like especially the Sejuani, right, is way out of meta. And trying to force champs like that back in, like, usually is a very short-term thing. And then the one point that I'll take a lot of umbrage with is I think Someday is one of the top 3 tank players of all time. Like, when I think of his champs, I think of Maokai, Shen, as some of his biggest champs. Bruisers like Renekton for sure, Gnar, and stuff like that. So I think that if all of our other pieces are where they need to be, and it's fair to call them out for not being or not performing on stage, but I think Someday's a great tank player.
Right, and I'm not.
But if you argue that we
discrediting
can't win right now with tanks, you might be correct. But that's a us problem, not a Someday problem. I don't think.
Right, for sure. I would just like to see him, on like Fiora's, Jace's, some of the current meta, 1v9 carries.
Well, I wouldn't say don't hold your breath. There's going to be some fun stuff from Someday. Of course, he always has the chance to pop off. But if that's all we're known for, like red side only, Someday carries, like, then I don't think we're going to Worlds. So we need more than that. But it's nice to have in the back pocket for sure.
Hey, thanks so much for the call.
Sure.
Is there anything you want to say, any shout outs before we move on to the next caller?
Yeah, I want to first shout out my wife, Savannah. Love you. Shout out my boys, Steven and Josh. And hashtag Poundtown, cat for Kobe.
Thanks so much for the call.
It's been a while. It's his birthday,
It's Kobe's birthday. That's true. Happy birthday, Kobe. Mark and Kobe freakishly on the same day. All right, you want to grab the next caller?
Yep.
Okay. Moose Coca, Game or GF, TL is Panda, the Jumbles, MathGeek7262, GM, PS, Mendes, Raging Pianist, and Hollows Ol 805. Hey, got our next caller here. Ham Senpai, where are you calling from?
The Bay Area, California.
Bay Area. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my hot take is that, and I'll preface this by saying that I worked for Optic as an analyst last year.
Cool.
Getting rid of Zab and Keaton is unironically the best thing that they've ever done, and also hands down the best thing that's happened in the league since franchise.
You worked with them as a
analyst. I was a remote analyst.
Did you know that, Mark, when you pulled this call?
I knew he said he was a remote analyst and getting rid of them was good, but I didn't know it was going to be that.
Did your stint there end well?
It kind of just ended. So I worked very closely with Croissant, who left to go work for Liquid. So that was kind of the end of my work for them, basically. You know. So
do you have any things you want to share?
You see, why, I guess why don't you?
I'm not looking for leaks, but like you're basically like, I guess these guys sucked, but like we kind of need more than that.
Yeah, no, sure. So I didn't interact directly with Zab too much because like the way Optic was structured at the time was that we were each working in kind of partnerships. But yeah, I mean, just like from my personal, I mean, Twitch Tech can flame me, but my personal experience is that Zab's a bad coach. And the only reason why Optic was good at all was because Croissant was hard carrying. Because he joined, I think, in 2018 spring. And they started improving ever so slightly every season since then. And once he left, then it really, Zab got exposed as being like, Zab doesn't really know what he's doing. So, yeah.
And you mentioned Keaton as well.
Are you Croissant? Quick question: I was
going to say, has anyone seen this person and Croissant in the same room?
I'm not Croissant. I'll say that much.
That's what Croissant would say.
But yeah, no, like I think one of the reasons why TL is doing a lot better this split, I mean marginally, is because Croissant is contributing a lot to the team, and they've talked about that in their podcasts and their videos. Like Chad has spoken a lot about how helpful Croissant is. So yeah, but I mean Keaton at the same time, like this is a guy who was leaking challenger scrim strats to other teams, and somehow he ended up in this position where he's running a team. It's just like, this is why this is good for the league, because owners and higher ups are now saying like, oh, like enough is enough. We need to really crack down on like the sheer incompetence of it all. Yeah.
I want to be very careful here and just make sure that like people know that this is your take. And
personal take only.
Things that you are alleging are not necessarily what we're alleging, because obviously you're making some strong accusations.
So what I'll say, I'll take the other side of this, since I don't think you have a pretty strong opinion on one end. I'll go on the other end, and I'll say that I talked with Zab a couple times in off seasons, and I've talked about this before, about like how hard it is to evaluate a roster on the outside. You were on the inside, so this is obviously me speaking on the outside. But when you don't know what budgets people have to get to build their rosters and to actually sign the talent that everyone's going after, especially in North America, where it's arguably more limited, just because so many other people are going for imports, and then the good North American talent is what everyone wants. So in that context, Zab had a 39% win rate, around 40% win rate. They almost qualified for playoffs. They had some even record splits. None of that's incredible stuff. Not saying that's amazing, but I don't think they ever had incredible rosters either. I think you can argue some of that is, on the GM to put together a great roster and whatnot, but it's also about, what their budgets are. Travis, you had, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've done this more than I have, but like the wins per cost,
dollar per win kind of thing.
Yeah. Where was Immortals on that stuff?
I'm trying to see if I can.
You have a graphic you can.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now, so I'd have to.
To your
go back
point,
and look.
though, to Mark's point, while you load things up, he's completely correct. Like, obviously, there's wildly different budgets in the LCS, like Optic versus Team Liquid. I'm sure, and that space would have been like wildly different. What I'll say is that the performances they got, the amount of wins they got for the amount they spent, someone was doing a really great job there. Like, there's definitely someone who was able to get a lot of value, and that person definitely should get an opportunity with more money to see if they can replicate the success. So I think in scenarios like that, I agree with Mark in that we can't really evaluate Zab's performance in a vacuum, but depending on the skills he picked up and and where he lands next, we at least have like one data point with a lot of context around it that either is going to prove that he had some shrewd skills that he can turn into something, or that, like the caller is saying, that maybe he doesn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess we'll have to see how things go. I can't pull the YouTube video. Mark is
I did it.
Okay.
So Optic was 5th and Immortals, or no, excuse me, Optic was 6th and Immortals was 5th in terms of number of wins per dollar.
So like middle of the pack, essentially.
So middle of the pack, yeah.
Yeah.
For 2019 or I guess 2018, 2019 is what they would be.
I mean, the sense I get, and this is just like a theory, but you kind of wonder that if perhaps those guys had a second chance whenever Immortals came in, because it's like you kind of have like new management comes in, they don't really know what everything was like previously, and so they're like, okay, well, who knows what's up? Let's just give this a chance, and then maybe Spring Split was that chance, and that's why we ended up in this situation a couple weeks into summer. So I don't know. I know we're a little over time, Ham, so unfortunately we can't dive back in. It sounds like you have a lot of stuff that you got on your mind about this. So,
no, I'm just here for the spicy clickbait takes. To
Yeah.
get the views up, get the clicks up.
Well, either way, thanks so much, Ham, for the call. Anything you want to shout out as we move on to our final caller?
If you want to flame me, I stream on Twitch, so you can come stop by my Twitch channel, I guess. Or if you want to talk about
What's your
strategy
Twitch
or anything
channel?
like that, my Twitch channel is twitch.tv/flying_ham.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
yep. See ya.
I'm surprised how few Twitch shout outs we get. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, I think I guess maybe we just don't have as many streamers, but I think we have in the past. It's just not as many. Mark is grabbing our last caller
Lucky last.
right now.
Labuda's
here. Labuda, you've been on before.
Of course, yeah.
But I think it's
How you
been a
doing?
while, right?
Yeah, I was the G2 is the best team in the world, world's guy.
Yeah. Well, you were close.
You were close.
Anyway, what do you want to talk about? Oh, sorry. Remind me where you're calling from.
Illinois.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I want to talk about TSM specifically, and I wanted to kind of give credit where credit's due, especially to Reginald. It honestly amazes me that year after year he can take these amazingly talented rosters and just do fuck all with them, completely run them into the ground.
What
ruin
is
them.
going on tonight?
I don't know, dude.
So
isn't TSM still the winningest team of?
Hold on. Let me
North
just
America, especially when you expand out beyond LCS.
Let me explain my rationale here. So this doesn't just expand through League, right? The same thing happened with Counter-Strike, where their old Counter-Strike team left them, and then the core ended up being the best team historically, right? Australia is one of the best Counter-Strike teams historically. Then you come back to League, and you're like, all right, this is his game. Reginald should be able to do something with it. And they were pretty good, obviously, domestically. They were dominating domestically. Nothing internationally. Okay, fine. And they didn't have the talent. They came back domestically, changed some stuff up, and they just, I don't know what happened. Sven massively underperformed with that roster. And then he goes to Cloud9 and is like a god. Then you have the whole fiasco with, we're going to use Grig, we're going to use Acadian, we're going to use Grig, we're going to use Acadian. Playoffs come. Hey, by the way, let's go put in our Academy roster guy for no reason. And then absolutely blow your world's chance. They look okay right now, and then there was obviously the whole. I'm a Dardock fanboy too, so that just added another.
You
thing.
don't say.
That just added another little thing to the list, and it's just I personally don't understand how you can be a TSM fan when they disappoint year after year after year and have never done anything internationally. I just think Reggie's a terrible owner. I think Jack is one of the best owners out there. Right up on the pedestal, and I don't know. I hate that organization.
So I thought this was going to be
about. Tell me how you really feel.
It's I thought this was going to be about TSM right now, and then I'd be able to pick Papa's brain. Of the 4 and 2 teams.
I mean, I still think right now, what is their big win? They beat EG. Cool. Congratulations. But that's about it.
Well,
right?
I mean, hold on, can you mute because you're getting feedback a little bit?
Oh, yeah, my bad.
No problem. I mean, beating EG is basically as good of a win as you can get right now outside of beating C9. So like if beating EG isn't impressive, isn't beating anyone impressive?
So obviously I'm gonna be biased, right? Because I just flamed their entire life. But they like even throughout the games, like they just haven't really. I mean, maybe they're still coming together and like trying to put stuff together. But personally, they just haven't looked that good. And I feel like this happens a lot with this team, where they like look all right throughout the year, and then they get to playoffs and they just a mental boom or something like, and like all those things I listed, like if I was a big fan of that organization, like what are you doing? Like I can't understand the thought process, I guess.
My cat was jumping at the wall a second ago.
It's okay.
Papa, what do you think about? Labuda, can you mute whenever you're not talking?
Oh yeah, sorry.
What do you think about TSM this split? I don't know if we want to tackle the legacy of TSM in the scope of a 5-minute call.
I think the one thing that you notice about TSM is that I never really understood is obviously a lot loaded with talent, right? A lot of established players and good talent all through. The thing that's always puzzled me about them is they're kind of like flavor of the week champ, or like that they have lots of one-offs or lots of like, I'm testing this champion for stage, playing it on stage, it didn't work, so now we'll never play it again stuff, which I guess to me doesn't really make sense because they should be a strong team fundamentally. They have really solid players, and I feel like if they were more standard, kind of like they were accused of being in like 2016, 2017, I think they would find more success from it. So I guess to me, I'm always puzzled by them in that they always feel like they should be better than they truly are. It's like a Schrodinger's box situation. So I guess I'm just Schrodinger's cat. Sorry. So it's like yeah, it
both work.
Yeah. He had the box and the cat.
He put the cat in the box.
So that's the part that puzzles me is, but I do get why the fandom persists, and it's because you have people who've been there from the start, but I think more importantly, like, don't you have to tune in to work out whether they have their shit together this week? Like, you gotta watch it, because what if you miss the game where it all comes together and Double Lift and Bjergsen and Biofrost's flying everywhere, doing all the big plays? Like, you can't miss that. You got to be there. It's appointment watching. So it's a compelling story, even if it does feel like the consistency is all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, their decline has been definitely perplexing. But it's not like they've become suddenly a garbage trash team. You know, like even this, which is the lowest and the biggest downfall they've ever had, it's still, you know, to put it in perspective, better than Golden Guardians has ever had in their inception, like their history. Same with Optic and Immortals and some teams, you know, like it's definitely a fall from grace, but their lowest finish was tied for like Golden Guardians' highest, I believe.
So I guess the thing to decouple there, Mark, though, is because they've always had Bjerg and have often had
of course.
Which is more disappointing, or like which is worse, is kind of a very interesting question. Where like the team that never had the like amazing piece could never break into like the upper echelon, or the team that had all the advantages never got there. Well, obviously never is a relative time period, but I think the TSM has been set up to succeed for a long time. So I think fans should be disappointed with the fact that they haven't taken down the big one. For summer, they make a big roster change. They bring in a big player with a very defined opinion on the game and a very defined take. The fact that they're 4-2 while they're for sure still working their shit out means that when they really get there, which arguably you can argue whether they do or not, like we did in spring, but the sky's the limit. So they should be definitely a team, to your point earlier, that is defined on do they win or do they not, and not as a disappointment.
Well, we'll have to see how things go in the coming weeks. But I mean, I almost hate that we have to end the show on this call, because obviously, like, this is the spicy TSM call that I did not necessarily expect to get in a generally 100 Thieves and system focused show. But anyway, thanks, Labuda. Any shout outs before we close out the show?
Yeah, just shout out PapaSmithy. He honestly encapsulated my point really. Obviously, I was going for the flame. He actually did like a good job of breaking it down, and I'm a big fan. I watched all your LCK casts. I hope you do. I wish you luck with your endeavors on the team.
Appreciate it.
Well,
Have a good one, guys. Thanks for having me on.
yeah, thanks so much. Have a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought for sure that was about to spiral into like, I hope you do well, but I also hope you return to cast. Like I felt like he was about to say that. I was like, oh no.
Well, I want to thank Papa so much for coming on the show. Is there anything that you want to shout out or say to anyone at the end here?
No. Obviously, we're taking a lot of risks this week. I'm playing on Friday with some pieces, and we have no idea how it's going to go. Like, obviously, it's going to be a very interesting week's practice since we're in it for the long haul. But thank you for the patience of the fans who tune in every week and try to make sense of whether we're moving in the right direction. We finally had kind of our feeling that we were not holding ourselves to that same improvement mindset and same improvement that was necessary to get to where we wanted to go. So we've made a big change. We're taking some risks, and we're hoping it pays off.
I just want to say thanks for coming on. This was a sick episode, and it was also very insightful. So thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. This has been Hotline. Oh, by the way, some people message me and they say, "Hey, can you make this into a podcast?" Yes, I say this all the time. It's on Spotify. I don't know if those people don't go look first.
They don't go look, Travis. It's the internet. It comes to you, or you don't see it.
Go look at Spotify first before you ask me if there's a podcast.
You should look up Anchor FM. I don't know anything about it, but apparently the Dive started using Anchor FM, and the Dive is a great podcast, so you might want to copy them.
I mean, I think
I don't like the one guy on it, Mark something.
Yeah, he's questionable. I think we use Anchor actually to distribute it. So either way, thanks everyone for watching. This has been Hotline League.